I'll discuss with council and get that on the schedule. I've given a lot of thought to that since, and I'm sure that we're very important.
We can discuss the open board seats. We might at that time of just reading the agenda, motion to appoint the following open board seats, and we have 1, 2, 3. It just sounds to me like it's going to be in one motion, so I just want to make sure ahead of time we can talk about each seat individually.
Well, we can talk about those and whether council chooses to adopt them en bloc or individually. That will be anyone else that you have?
I'm Tracy Moore. I live on 378 South Main Street. I just wanted to add to what Amy said about the dogs in the park. Just for well, not an anecdote, but something that happened. Last Tuesday, when I was down there with my staff and my kids from the center, one of my children was bit by a dog. She is okay. It was a very superficial bite. The owner of the dog had the dog completely under control. The child said, "Can I pet your dog?" She said yes. The child approached too aggressively. It was just one of those things that happens sometimes. The parents are fine, the child is fine. I think the owner lost more sleep over the worry of what was going to happen, waiting for me to call and say, it's okay. But that being said, it probably wouldn't have happened had that dog, and that dog has never bitten anyone. I know where that dog gets its shots now. I mean, they were very, very good about it. But it wouldn't happen if there wasn't a dog on the playground. Just so you know, it's not something that could happen, it actually already has. Just so you know.
If I can just back up for a minute, I did want to address one of the questions, one other point you made that I didn't get to, and that was the issue of you not receiving a response. The reason the manager replied to Councilman Alfonso is because that's who the request came from. So he had requested to have that on the agenda, and that's why Mr. Murray responded to the request. It was no disrespect in him to you. He just responded back to the request he received from the council.
But my email address was on. I emailed it to Mr. Alfonso and he reported it to him, so I still think that maybe you applied too late. I mean, I know it applied too late, but we're not going to add you to the agenda.
I apologize. I had never, since the email came from him, I thought that was him addressing it to me as, you know, add this to the agenda, so that's why I was responding back to him. I apologize.
Anyone else?
Just a few brief. I'll try to be real brief. Just some clarification on what Mr. McDonald was saying and about handicap accessibility and the code enforcer when Pangus was there, and we have somebody new, right, that takes care of that. Did the law change from Pangus to this new?
Yes.
There was a big change in the law? Because
if you may recall, this is within the last 5 years or so, that's when Pennsylvania adopted the UCC building code, which now governs buildings which never occurred, which also now applies whether you live in the township or in the borough or university. So before, what the borough operated was under its own borough building codes. There is now a universal standard that's applied statewide, and that has changed dramatically.
well, the reason I asked that clarification is because I was a member of the board at the Moose when we progressed from Main Street to the new building, and you wouldn't believe the hoops Mr. Pangus made us jump through. Down to the handicap parking signs had to be in Braille. Now, if we got to have a handicap sign in Braille, so somebody that's blind that drives over to the building, when he gets out of his car, he has to fill them and make sure he's in the handicap spot. Okay? Then why wouldn't it be impossible for them, when they was doing that construction, to put a ramp in there so anybody, and there's a lot of people in our fine town that is handicapped and wheelchair bound, and we are a senior citizens town, and there's a lot of why our code enforcement didn't make, or the new code people that is supposed to be representing the code and the laws have that done. There shouldn't be a building in this town where Mr. Peden couldn't roll up there and go in, whether it was the bar or the 5 and 10 store, you know? Because I have an aunt that's on the board for the Pennsylvania State Handicap Association. I don't know the exact. But I'll tell you what, if she come into town here, she would have a heyday. I'm serious about that. And I just needed some clarification on the law. If it changed that drastically, from the hoops we had to jump through over there to get that building open, it cost us a lot more money than it should have. Why something as small as a little slope ramp going into one of the buildings on Main Street, if the law had changed that much?
Well, I know what you're saying, that I would venture to say the heavy-handed approach that occurred, that you experienced for Moose, is what deterred a lot of people from opening businesses downtown. And I think that having a much more business-friendly environment and having a code office that, I mean, not to speak out of school, but Mr. Borough, I would say to you, he's told me I have liberty to express this, he would not have done the renovations he made under the previous code enforcement of his borough because it would have been impossible. Now, if we had used that kind of a heavy hammer, as was referred to on last Thursday, you would not have the investment in that business that has taken place now.
Okay, and on that, in that same hand,
that's the trade-off you have to make.
could it be pick and choose, depending, well, this guy's willing to put a handicap spot in, this guy says, no, I ain't gonna do it, I don't have to.
He has to comply.
You know what I mean?
They all have to comply with the law.
They have to comply, right? Whether they're gonna do renovations or not, they still have to comply with the code.
The only time they have to bring their building up to code is when they're doing renovations.
Right.
So existing buildings downtown that are not being touched, if you feel or don't feel that they're in compliance, there's nothing in the law that requires them. The way the state law is written is whenever they go to make renovations on a building, that's when they have to submit their plans, and that's when they have to comply with the current law.
Okay, then the code enforcement agency that's doing that work for us said it was all right for him to do that renovation without it being handicap accessible in the front or the back? And that could be any building in town then, right?
No. It's
If they do renovation.
If it's evaluated on a case-by-case basis,
I'm not sure what that means.
You just made a blanket statement that no business downtown has to make handicap accessible.
No, do they or don't they?
No, they. What I'm saying is that every time a property owner who is doing renovations, the only time it applies, and they make an application and present plans to the third-party code, the building code officer, they review that, looking at the building code specs that they have to comply with, and they determine what is or is not feasible. Frankly, as I read to you in the case of that facility, it was a determination that the requirement was excessive for that business. That's the reason they were granted an exception. That, when I say on a case-by-case basis, the plans of any particular business, those are evaluated by each individual case. Because of the way the sidewalk sets and the way things are designed, I'm not making excuses for anybody involved. It would have been extremely expensive to make the kind of changes that would be necessary to comply with that level of accessibility. And that's when the determination was made that those costs exceed the cost threshold for that project.
In that particular renovation. Okay. A 4-inch step is not as expensive as a 4-inch gradual slope.
That slope would have to come down into his business because there's not enough room out in front of that sidewalk to create a ramp. So he'd have to, I'll give you an example. If you visit Cadroni's, for example, they slope down into their business. That's what would have had to have happened in that property in order for it to comply. I think